Hey there, so in this video, we're going to go back to part 2 of the chapter, Where to Begin and How. Just a quick note for you. It's kind of a longer video than part 1, but I wanted to give you in one video this section that's coming up, beginning with the heading, Correction of Movements is the Best Means of Self-Improvement. And then he's going to numerically go through an argument with many points about why he believes that is the case. And this is absolutely crucial to why Feldenkrais chooses movement as the medium for which he is going to create this method for human development. Correction of movements is the best means of self-improvement. It has been noted that any one of the 4 components of the waking state inescapably influences the others. The choice of movement as the main means of improving the self is based on the following reasoning. 1, the nervous system is occupied mainly with movement. Movement occupies the nervous system more than anything else because we cannot sense, feel, or think without a many-sided and elaborate series of actions initiated by the brain to maintain the body against the pull of gravity. At the same time, we must know where we are and in what position. In order to know our position within the field of gravity with respect to other bodies, or to change our position, we must make use of our senses, our feeling, and our power of thought. The active involvement of the entire nervous system in the waking state is a part of every method of self-improvement, even in those that claim to be concerned with only one of the 4 components of the waking state. 2, it is easier to distinguish the quality of movement. We know more clearly and certainly about the organization of the body against the pull of gravity than we do about the other components. We know much more about movement than about anger, love, envy, or even thought. It is relatively easier to learn to recognize the quality of a movement than the quality of other factors. 3, we have a richer experience of movement. We all have more experience of movement and more capacity for it than of feeling and thought. Many people do not differentiate between overexcitability and sensitivity, and consider highly developed sensitivity a weakness. They suppress any troubled feelings and avoid situations that might arouse those feelings. In a similar way, thought is also restrained or broken off by many people. Freedom of thought is considered defiance of the accepted laws of behavior, not only in religion, but also in matters affecting ethnic affiliation, economics, morality, sex, art, politics, and even science. 4, the ability to move is important to self-value. A person's physical build and his ability to move are probably more important to his self-image than anything else. We must only watch a child who has found some imperfection in his mouth or something else in his appearance that seems to make him different from other children to convince ourselves that this discovery will affect his behavior considerably. If, for instance, his spine has not developed normally, he will have difficulty with movements requiring a keen sense of balance. He will stumble easily and will require a constant conscious effort to achieve what other children do quite naturally. He has developed differently from the others. He discovers that he must think and prepare himself in advance. He cannot rely on his own spontaneous reactions. Thus, difficulties in moving undermine and distort his self-regard and force him into behavior that interferes with his development in the direction of his natural inclinations. 5, all muscular activity is movement. Every action originates in muscular activity. Seeing, talking, and even hearing require muscular action. In hearing, the muscle regulates the tension of the eardrum in accordance with the loudness of the sound perceived. Not only are mechanical coordination and temporal and spatial accuracy important in every movement, its intensity is also important. Permanent relaxation of muscles causes action to be slow and feeble, and permanent excessive tension causes jerky and angular movements. Both make states of mind apparent and are linked with the motive of the actions. Thus, in mental patients, nervous persons, and those with an unstable self-image, it is possible to discern disturbances in the muscular tonus in accordance with the deficiency. At the same time, other attributes of action, such as rhythm and adjustment in time and space, may be more satisfactory. It is possible to discern trouble in the regulation of intensity in movements and in the facial expression of a person on the street, even for an unskilled observer who does not know exactly what is wrong. 6, movements reflect the state of the nervous system. The muscles contract as a result of an unending series of impulses from the nervous system. For this reason, the muscular pattern of the upright position, facial expression, and voice reflect the condition of the nervous system. Obviously, neither position, expression, nor voice can be changed without a change in the nervous system that mobilizes the outward and visible changes. Thus, when we refer to muscular movement, we mean, in fact, the impulses of the nervous system that activate the muscles, which cannot function without impulses to direct them. Though the heart muscle of the embryo begins to contract even before the nerves that will control it have developed, it does not work in the way familiar to us until its own nervous system can regulate its action. From this, we may derive a conclusion that seems paradoxical at first sight. Improvement in action and movement will appear only after a prior change in the brain and the nervous system has occurred. That is, an improvement in body action reflects the change in the central control, which is the exclusive authority. The change in the center control is a change in the nervous system. As such, changes are invisible to the eye. Their external expression is therefore considered as purely mental by some people, while others will consider them as purely physical. 7, movement is the basis of awareness. Most of what goes on within us remains dulled and hidden from us until it reaches the muscles. We know what is happening within us as soon as the muscles of our face, heart, or breathing apparatus organize themselves into patterns, known to us as fear, anxiety, laughter, or any other feeling. Even though only a very short time is required to organize the muscular expression to the internal response or feeling, we all know that it is possible to check one's own laughter before it becomes noticeable to others. Similarly, we can prevent ourselves from giving visible expression to fear and other feelings. We do not become aware of what is happening in our central nervous system until we become aware of changes that have taken place in our stance, stability, and attitude, for these changes are more easily felt than those that have occurred in the muscles themselves. We are able to prevent full muscular expression because the processes in that part of the brain that deals with functions peculiar to man alone are far slower than the processes in those parts of the brain dealing with what is common to both man and animals. It is the very slowness of these processes that makes it possible for us to judge and decide whether or not to act. The whole system ranges itself so that muscles are ordered and ready either to carry out the action or prevent it from being carried out. As soon as we become aware of the means used to organize an expression, we may occasionally discern the stimulus that set it all off. In other words, we recognize the stimulus for an action or the cause for a response when we become sufficiently aware of the organization of the muscles of the body for the action concerned. Sometimes we may be aware that something is happening within us without being able to define exactly what it is. In this case, a new pattern of organization is taking place, and we do not yet know how to interpret it. When it has occurred several times, it will become familiar. We will recognize its cause and sense the very first signs of the process. In some cases, the experience will have to be repeated many times before it is recognized. Ultimately, we become aware of most of what is going on within us, mainly through the muscles. A smaller part of this information reaches us through the envelope, that is, the skin that encompasses the whole body, the membranes that line the digestive tract, and the membranes that enclose and line the breathing organs and those of the inner surfaces of the mouth, nose, and the anus. 8. Breathing is movement. Our breathing reflects every emotional or physical effort and every disturbance. It is also sensitive to the vegetative processes. Disturbances of the thyroid gland, for instance, cause a special kind of breathing that serves to diagnose this disease. Any strong, sudden stimulus causes a halt in breathing. Everybody knows from his own experience how closely linked breathing is with every change of feeling or anticipation of a strong emotion. Throughout the history of mankind, we find systems and rules designed to induce a calming effect by improved breathing. The human skeleton is so constructed that it is almost impossible to organize breathing properly without also satisfactorily placing the skeleton with respect to gravity. The reorganization of breathing alone succeeds only to the degree that we succeed indirectly in improving the organization of the skeletal muscles for better standing and better movement. 9. Hinges of habit. Finally, and most important of all, there is one more reason why we should choose the action system as the point of attack for the improvement of man. All behavior, as we noted before, is a complex of mobilized muscles, sensing, feeling, and thought. Each of these components of action could, in theory, be used instead, but the part played by the muscles is so large in the alternatives that if it were omitted from the patterns in the motor cortex, the rest of the components of the pattern would disintegrate. The motor cortex of the brain, where patterns activating the muscles are established, lies only a few millimeters above the brain strata dealing with association processes. All the feeling and sensing that a man has experienced were at one time linked with the association processes. The nervous system has a fundamental characteristic. We cannot carry out an action and its opposite at the same time. At any single moment, the whole system achieves a kind of general integration that the body will express at that moment. Position, sensing, feeling, thought, as well as chemical and hormonal processes combine to form a whole that cannot be separated out into its various parts. This whole may be highly complex and complicated, but it is the integrated whole of the system at that given moment. Within every such integration, we become aware of only those elements that involve the muscles and the envelope. we have already seen that the muscles play the main role in awareness. It is not possible for change to take place in the muscle system without a prior corresponding change in the motor cortex. If we can succeed in some way in bringing about a change in the motor cortex, and through this a change in the coordination of or in the patterns themselves, the basis of awareness in each elementary integration will disintegrate. Owing to the close proximity to the motor cortex of the brain structures dealing with thought and feeling, and the tendency of processes in brain tissue to diffuse and spread to neighboring tissues, a drastic change in the motor cortex will have parallel effects on thinking and feeling. A fundamental change in the motor basis within any single integration pattern will break up the cohesion of the whole and thereby leave thought and feeling without anchorage in the patterns of their established routines. In this condition, it is much easier to effect changes in thinking and feeling, for the muscular part through which thinking and feeling reach our awareness has changed and no longer expresses the patterns previously familiar to us. Habit has lost its chief support, that of the muscles, and has become more amenable to change. Okay, so that is where to begin and how. So you can see is really laying out some much more specific relationships here between how the body and brain function and what it means to change the self-image. But I'll say more in a commentary that I'll make soon about this chapter, and then the following chapter after that is going to be called Structure and Function. So thanks again for listening, and please, if you have comments either on Feldenkrais' text as I'm reading it or any of the commentaries, please do leave those below the videos. If you like this video or share it with others, then more people can begin to gain this understanding of how the Feldenkrais method could be considered an integral part of a practice of cultivating wisdom. So I encourage you to do that if you found benefit from following along. And thanks again. See you soon.